All right, so first off, all praise to Yahweh, in the name of his son, Yahweh Shai, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops, Great Millstone, otherwise known as GMS for short, but also known as the Prophets of Doom. These are where I have learned this truth and where I am still learning this truth. And also, Shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I'm of that number. All right, so this is coming right off the heels of the first part that we did, speaking of the curses. Let's see. I don't even know what I'm going to title this yet. I might just title it Consequences of Disobedience. All right, some consequences of disobedience, or example of consequences in disobedience. I don't know what I'm going to title it yet. Might even put something that has to do with destruction. All right, but let's go ahead and get to it. Again, let me get to this fair use. Fair use disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All rights and credit go directly to its rightful owners. No copyright infringement is intended. All right, so again, the question that I asked in the previous video to Google is, first, let's visit some instruments of death that were used during the Middle Passage and the years spent in slavery, and then let's move to the subject of starvation and waste. All right. So it says the following details of the horrific instruments of control and death used during the Middle Passage and the years of slavery, followed by information regarding the deliberate use of starvation and waste as further methods of oppression. So instruments of death and torture. It says instruments of torture and death were systematically employed to control, punish, and brutalize enslaved Africans both during the transatlantic voyage and on plantations. So take what's useful here, all right? It keeps using this word African just because this is a continent that we last left before coming over here, all right? But we're speaking about Israelites here, all right? So, and not all Israelites suffered every single curse at one time. All right, throughout this thing that we call life, throughout this thing that we call life, these curses have been pursuing and following us due to our disobedience. Okay, and not all Israelites look the same either. All right, keep that in mind. That's something that a lot of people like to bring up, especially when they're not listening. Okay. Now what was I going to look up here? Systematic. I want to define this word. Oops. Hold on. Define systematic.
Systematic.
It says done. It's an adjective. All right. It says done or acting according to a fixed plan or system. All right. Methodical is what it says. So let's get the definition of methodical.
Methodical.
Another adjective, it says done according to a systematic or established form of procedure. Similar words are well ordered, well thought out, planned. Okay, and again, we have to go to Psalm 83. All right, I'm gonna start at 2. All right, well, verse 1 says, keep not thou silence, O power. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel. All right, that crafty counsel is this systematic, uh, are the systematic things that were planned against the Lord's people. All right, 83 and 3. Psalm 83 and 3. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the nation of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. All right, and it goes on to list all these other nations. All right, with the top nation there being listed in is Edom, and the second being the Ishmaelites. All right. So all of these nations are a part of this system. Okay. So let's go back here now. Okay. So again, instruments of death and torture. Instruments of torture and death were systematically or methodically employed to control, punish, and brutalize enslaved Africans both during the transatlantic voyage and on plantations. During the Middle Passage, it says the primary goal on slave ships was to maintain control over a large, resistant, captive population with a small crew. The instruments used were focused on physical restraint and forcing compliance. In this day, the restraints are more so in your spirit. Okay. So shackles and manacles. Monocles or manacles. All right. It says iron cuffs for wrists and ankles, sometimes called bilboes, Bilboes, were used from the time of capture until sale in the Americas. Men were typically chained together in pairs, limiting movement and making daily life insufferably cramped and unsanitary. This method worked so much so that it still lasts today. All right, in prison systems, you still see that method being used. It says whips. It says various whips, including the cat o' nine tails, which we spoke about in a previous video. The cat o' nine tails is a multi-tailed whip, often tipped with metal or barbs. Were used for routine punishment and to force participation in exercise, which was forced jumping or dancing on deck. Something called the speculum oris. Do me a favor. Cut that. Thank you. All right. Speculum oris says this was a scissor-shaped metal device, originally a surgical instrument used for lockjaw patients, that was forcibly inserted into the mouths of captives who attempted suicide by starvation, a form of resistance. Okay, it says starvation was a form of resistance. It says a screw mechanism pried their jaws open so food could be forced down their throats. All right, thumb screws. It says these devices were applied to the thumbs, which could be tightened by a screw to inflict excruciating pain and break the spirit of those who were obstinate or refused to eat. Okay, so slave ships were well armed to suppress mutinies, with crew members using muskets and half pikes to prevent rebellions. Let's see, what is a half pike? Hold on, because I don't know what that is. What is All right, a half pike was a short, sharp, spear-like naval weapon used by sailors on slave ships as a primary defense against insurrections by the enslaved Africans or people from the continent of Africa. I'll try to start saying that. And attacks by pirates. Description and use, it says it was a pole arm, essentially a shorter version of a traditional military pike, generally around half the length of a full pike. It featured a pointed blade or spearhead affixed to a wooden shaft. Some variations included a small hook near the base of the spearhead, which could be used for scaling ship sides during boarding actions or manipulate objects. The main use on slave ships was for control and suppression of the enslaved population. Captains and crew would present these weapons through loopholes in the barricades on the quarterdeck to repel any attempts by the enslaved men to force their way onto the main deck or breach restricted areas. All right, let me see. Down here at the bottom, it says the half pike also served as a symbol of authority and a weapon for use in close quarters combat during boarding actions. A common scenario in naval warfare and piracy during the era of the slave trade. Anyway, I don't want to get too much in that weapon. I just wanted to see what it was. And really, I didn't even look at a picture of the thing. That's all right. Okay, so nets. Nets. It says to prevent desperate individuals from jumping overboard to drown themselves, nets were sometimes installed along the sides of the ship. Now, how bad would it have to be for you to want to drown yourself? All right, so it's during the years of slavery on plantations. On land, the instruments of torture expanded to a variety of tools designed to inflict severe pain, mutilation, and psychological trauma. Now, again, why we're reading this? Berean Standard Bible, Daniel 9 and 12. You have carried out, all right, you, Yahweh, have carried out the word spoken against us and against our rulers by bringing upon us a great disaster. For under all of heaven for under all of heaven, nothing has ever been done like what has been done to Jerusalem. Okay. That's why we really don't bat an eye when things happen to other nations, right? Well, other people, let alone other nations. Okay. Not that we aren't human and we don't feel a type of way, right, for other people going through stuff, but nothing has been done like things that have been done unto Israel. Okay. So again, on land, the instrument of torture expanded to a variety of tools designed to inflict severe pain, mutilation, and psychological trauma. Also, that doesn't mean that no single human being outside of Israel has ever gone through anything. But as far as the nation as a whole, all right, no other nation has gone through the things that Israel has gone through. Okay. Whipping posts and whips. Flogging was the most common punishment for any infraction, real or perceived. Whips made of rawhide or hickory sprouts were used so severely that they often left permanent scars or caused death. Iron collars and neck braces. All right, yokes of iron. All right, we read about those in Deuteronomy. These were heavy devices, sometimes fitted with bells or inward pointing spikes, placed around the neck to restrict movement, prevent lying down, and publicly mark an individual as punishment. Okay, branding irons. Enslaved peoples were branded with hot irons to mark them as property and to punish runaways. Branding marks could be an owner's initials or a letter. Example, an M on the face of a woman who ran away. Okay, now this points to even back here in these times, all right, this mark being a physical thing. All right, the mark that is to come, the mark of the beast, is going to be a physical thing. All right, something put on the inside of you to show ownership. All right, it says branding marks could be an owner's initials or a letter. All right. Anyway, something to consider when we talk about Revelation 13, verse 16. All right. It says punishment masks or iron muzzles. It says these metal cages were locked over the face to prevent speech or eating, used to punish a range of offenses and inflict humiliation. Masters and overseers often used what was at hand as a weapon, including oak clubs, shovels, tongs, and heavy shoe heels. Hounds were specifically trained to track and attack runaways, often tearing flesh from their bodies. For serious offenses, enslavers resorted to extreme measures such as cutting off limbs, castration, slitting ears, or half hanging and burning alive. Often as a public spectacle to terrorize others into obedience. Okay, we talked about critical race theory, all right, which a lot of people are not wanting taught, because a lot of this, these pictures from back then, all right, a lot of these records from back then, visual and writings, all right, a lot of people's family members are implicated in these things. Okay, a lot of people that are living and dead, living because it wasn't that long ago. Okay, this is why they don't want certain things taught. All right, it points to whom they are. The Lord said that He was going to make the wicked bare, right? Meaning point out who they are, give examples of who they are, and that you can look throughout all history. All right, starvation and waste. Hold on, before we go on, let me check this time. Yeah. Starvation and waste. So starvation and the waste of human life were pervasive elements of the system, stemming from both the deliberate withholding of adequate provisions and the inhumane conditions that led to mass death. It says the middle passage, inadequate nutrition was a major factor in the high mortality rates on slave ships. All right. Right now, Esau is making it to where there is inadequate nutrition or nutrients in the ground even. All right, they're messing with the foods. Okay. No matter where they go, there they are. All right. So it says enslaved people from the continent of Africa were typically fed only once or twice a day, with meager rations of beans, corn, yams, rice, and palm oil, often accompanied by insufficient water. Yeah, you listen carefully, man. A lot of this stuff is even now, all right, brought on by the world now, the rulers of this place now, right? The ones who have the earth in their hand, okay, the wicked. Force feeding for profit. It says the primary concern of captains was preserving their valuable cargo for maximum profit. Starvation was a form of resistance, and those who refused to eat were brutally force-fed to prevent them from dying by their own will. Those who died, estimated at 15 to 25% of the cargo in the 17th and 18th centuries, were simply thrown overboard as waste. Actually, when I typed this in here and I put waste, it was to speak about the food that these people did have, such as fish, abundance of fish and everything, and they chose to throw the leftovers away instead of even feed other people. But that goes on today also. A lot of these businesses in the food sector, if you want to call it that, all right, a lot of the waste that they have out there could feed a lot of people. The question is are the people that's even hungry, would they even want to ingest that poison shit that they feed everybody? Okay, but they could easily feed a lot of people with what they throw away. As a matter of fact, if people get caught dumpster diving in certain businesses dumpsters, they'll get in trouble for eating what someone else threw away, man. It says on plantations, food was used as a tool of control, and human life was treated with callous disregard. Adequate food was often withheld as a means of punishment or control. Enslaved people who did not meet their rigorous work quotas were subject to whipping, not extra food. While some owners provided basic necessities to keep their workforce functional, many suffered from malnutrition, leading to diseases like scurvy and dysentery, which were major causes of death. Enslaved individuals were forced to work from dawn to dusk, and failure to meet daily quotas resulted in severe whippings. If a quota was met, it was often simply increased the next day, pushing bodies past their limit for increased production. The system treated enslaved individuals as commodities or cattle rather than human beings. The death of an enslaved person was primarily an economic loss to be managed, not a moral tragedy. This inherent waste was a fundamental part of the system's barbarity. Now, reading that, you can see today, all right? You can tie that in today, all right? But back then, okay, or back then and throughout all time, the focus is Israel. All right, it says it is Israel. They're just using the same methods on people today, no matter who they are. All right, no matter if they're even Edomites, they use the same thing that worked on Israelites for the whole world. All right. So I just wanted to touch on a little bit of that. So let's end with this again. All right. Deuteronomy 28 and 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And that is 2/3 of Israel, also over here in America, better known as Babylon the Great. Okay, a lot of you Israelites still are not hearkening unto the voice of the Lord. Let's get those in the let's get that in the NLT. So Deuteronomy 28 and 45 through 50 says, if you refuse to listen to the Lord your power and to obey the commands and decrees he has given you, all these curses will pursue and overtake you until you are destroyed. These horrors will serve as a sign and warning among you and your descendants forever. If you do not serve the Lord your power with joy and enthusiasm for the abundant benefits you have received, you will serve your enemies whom the Lord will send against you. You will be left hungry, thirsty, naked, and lacking in everything. The Lord will put an iron yoke on your neck, oppressing you harshly until he hath destroyed you or took a structure away from us. All right, the Lord will bring a distant nation against you from the end of the earth, and it will swoop down on you like a vulture It is a nation whose language you do not understand, a fierce and heartless nation that shows no respect for the old and no pity for the young. All right. Let's see. Oh, yeah, let's get down here. All right, let's move down here to Deuteronomy 28:61. The Lord will afflict you with every sickness and plague there is, even those not mentioned in this book of instruction, until you are destroyed. All right, even the ones not mentioned. It says, though you become as numerous as the stars in the sky, few of you will be left because you would not listen to the Lord your power. Just as the Lord has found great pleasure in causing you to prosper and multiply, the Lord will find pleasure in destroying you. You will be torn from the land you are about to enter and occupy. And it goes on all the way back here to Deuteronomy 28:64. For the Lord will scatter you among all the nations from one end of the earth even to the other, and there you will worship foreign gods that neither you nor your ancestors have known, gods made of wood and stone. All right, today especially, all right, is a really good example of that, because a lot of you are out there doing exactly that. Okay, right now. So, that was it for that for now. All right. So I hopefully this came through as sincere and edifying. With that, all praise to Yahweh, and in the name of the Son, Yahweh Shai, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops of Great Millstone, otherwise known as GMS for short, but also known as the Prophets of Doom. These are where I have learned this truth and where I am still learning this truth, and also Shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I'm of that number, and Lord willing, we'll see you in the next video. Shalom.